Welcome to Smart Muslimah podcast. Inshallah, if you find this podcast episode useful, please subscribe and tell your friends and family about Smart Muslimah. Also, good news, I have a newsletter, and that's how we can stay in touch. To subscribe, please go to smartmuslimah.com. Details are also in the podcast notes. In the newsletter, I'll be sharing my book recommendations, productivity tips, and online courses that I've created. So, the topic I'm discussing today is not my body, not my choice. Well, that's when I'm thinking of it like this, but the famous version of the statement is my body, my choice. So, first, let me explain why I'm discussing this. I discuss the whole subject of that slogan, my body, my choice, in my Islam and feminism course, which I've created. It's on smartmuslimah.com. And one of the reasons why I thought this topic is so important is that I see it a lot on social media platforms. And I hear women, whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim, that seems to be a way of thinking, because it's not only is it a slogan, but it's become like a way of thinking and a principle that women are living by. And when I first heard it, I wanted to know, okay, so what does it mean? It sounds good. It sounds quite harmless, doesn't it? That, yeah, it's my body and I can choose what I do with it. And so I've heard it when people have discussed abortion, reproductive rights, when people discuss hijab, when women discuss the whole discussion around sexual harassment, the idea of victim blaming as well. That's something, that when a woman is blamed, she's attacked and she's blamed based on the way she dresses. So there are many times when this has come up, and that it's this idea that no one should tell not just women, but men as well, because I think it's becoming, men, women, and children, regarding what we can do with our bodies, how we choose to cover our bodies, and also what we decide to do with. It's even gone as far as if you want to change the changes you want to make to your body. I think that's the thing that is very alarming now. So, okay, when did this statement first turn up? Okay, it happened in the 1960s. That's when you first heard it. That if you just Google women's marches in the 1960s, and this is the whole era of sexual liberation. Think of the hippies. Think of the slogans of free love. You'll see in these marches, you will see that placard, "My body, my choice." And when I first began studying feminism, this was just purely for myself. I was interested because, again, I was being told as a woman I should adopt feminist ideas. And feminism is like, for me, it's the way to get my rights. And again, that's for all women, Muslim or non-Muslim. And I thought, okay, I'm really interested to know, where has this come from? So, and the reason why that statement was made was in the 1960s, you had a discussion, and well, actually not only discussion, an argument between conservatives who were against, and this is in America, it all began in America. I'm sure American listeners know more than me about this, but there was a discussion regarding abortion and that the women should have the right to do it. Now, at that time, women, women can get pregnant and not want a pregnancy for many reasons. And so at that time, they had no legal way to get an abortion. So what you could be, for example, a victim of abuse, you could be a victim of rape, or you could, even for health reasons, it was very difficult for a woman to get an abortion. And so unfortunately, what women would turn to were illegal abortions, backstreet abortions, and they were very unhygienic. Women would die, women would have massive complications, So there was a lot of trouble around this subject, and we have to understand that this was, it wasn't just women who wanted to, it can be sometimes painted as women who just wanted to have relationships out of marriage, and then they got pregnant and they didn't want that child. There are many. I do think when we look at the topic of feminism and women's rights, we should be, let's not just go for the stereotypes and, an argument that agrees with our way of thinking. We should be intelligent and objective enough to see there are many sides to a problem. So you had women who wanted this, and then you had a very conservative Christian society in America, who they felt this was a massive threat to the family. It would increase promiscuity. And again, their arguments were also valid. So then women were then saying, no, it's my body, it's my choice. I should be able to decide if I have a baby or not. Yeah. So that was the thinking. So then what happened was, as time went by, again, 1960s, 1970s, abortion was legalized, and the pill became legalized as well. But women could now go and get that abortion that they wanted. And that was seen as a step forward. So let's just that's the context of it. Now, for a Muslim now, when we're looking at that, what we need to realize is that it's not, abortion was just one part of it, because as a Muslim, we could look at this discussion and think, well, Islam does permit abortion within an Islamic framework. Yeah, there are a set number of days, all the classical schools of opinion agree that within a certain number of days, and there's hadith regarding this. I don't have the hadith in front of me, but we all know as Muslims, abortion within before the soul, the ruh, is blown into the fetus in the mother's stomach. Before that happens, before the bunch of cells, the fetus is actually, there's a point where the angel comes and it becomes a human being, and then at that point, after that, we cannot abort a child unless now then this is where fiqh comes into it, and I'm not going to delve into that because I'm not qualified to give those rulings. But if you need to find out about the details of abortion, please go to a person of knowledge, go to the school of thought that you follow, and you ask them your specific situation, because alhamdulillah, that's the beauty of Islam. Every specific situation, there is a ruling and you can find the answer. So I'm not going to be ignorant and give a ruling here, but within Islam, abortion is allowed within limits. Okay. But now, if you look at this discussion that happened in the 60s, that was a very different discussion. It was not, number one, Islam didn't come into it at all. And the point I'm making here is that as Muslims, just because something sounds like there is some overlap with Islam, it doesn't mean we wholesale just take it on board and think. So here it would be Islam permits abortion. Women have that right. So therefore, this statement is okay. So we don't do that. What we do first is we find out, what does Islam say about abortion, about the rights of humans over their bodies, men and women and children. And then we take it from there. So Islam is the starting point, and then we evaluate any way of thinking or any view that is being given to us, because that is what is this principle, my body, my choice, is what we are being told to accept. And as Muslims, we don't have to accept it. We have to think, what does the Quran and what does the Prophet ﷺ say about it first? And if it aligns with it, I'll take it. If it doesn't, I'm not going to do that. So what are then the ramifications of this statement? Because as Muslims, like I've said, we believe that Allah created our bodies, and then Allah also gave us rules, and it's and very detailed rules actually about, for example, what we consume for our bodies. Yeah, so it just for example, drugs and alcohol are haram. Yeah, whether it's weed, marijuana, cocaine, I can't think of any others. I'm sure you guys know, like for whether it's class A, class B, it's not permitted. In the same way, alcohol is not permitted. And the thing is that when you look at these things that Allah has told us not to consume, when you look at the ramifications of what happens when people do consume them, as we know, we all know the effects of drugs, the addiction of those two, drugs and alcohol, and the horrendous effects it has on an individual, and then on families, and then society. It's we all know that, and alhamdulillah, it's a blessing that Allah has said you cannot have them. They're there in the world. Some people say, oh, well, why did Allah create these things? Well, Allah is wise. Allah knows best. That's where our knowledge ends. And we trust in Allah's rules. We trust in Allah's guidance, and we follow it, because we can see what happens to people who do not follow it. How many alcoholics, how many, who have recovered, how many drug addicts who have recovered wished they had never gone down that path. But alhamdulillah, Allah's already told us, do not go down that path. So, okay, that's just one example of something we consume. Allah also tells us how men and women and children, how they stress. There's rules about that, and how it protects us, how it protects protects us from the gaze of others, because we have no idea when people are looking at us, what is their intention when looking at us, men or women, and children as well. And I'm going to keep bringing children into it, because the protection that Allah gives to children around this whole idea, because once children get it into their heads that, oh, it's my body, my choice, we'll discuss what that leads to. So the idea of tattoo, something as simple as tattoos, Allah has forbidden this. Yeah, again, Allah knows best why. When I think of the tattoos that I've seen, and the kind of, just the things that people are now writing on their bodies, and it's horrendous, astaghfirullah. But okay, so that's just a few rules, and I think as Muslims we should educate ourselves more about the idea of our body is an amana. Our body will. It's also interesting that our body isn't the most important thing. Like in Islam, the emphasis is on our intentions, our actions, our soul. Protecting, and our body. Nowadays, the obsession is with our bodies. We're made to be obsessed with our bodies. Just think of, I'm thinking of plastic surgery. I was living in Istanbul for a little while, and I think it is the capital of plastic surgery as far as the Muslim world, because it's become so cheap you can go there. By the way, I didn't go there to have any kind of plastic surgery, although people joked about that. And I'll tell you a funny story. I went to a women's salon just to find out about facials. And straight away, they offered me Botox, and I couldn't believe it. And then they were offering me all kinds of procedures, and I kind of did run out of there, because I was so shocked at how quickly procedures were being offered and how reasonably priced they were. But if you go to the malls there, you'll see people with they've had nose jobs. You can see the plasters. The men get their hair hair transplants. Now again, I'm not maybe it did sound like I am passing judgment on that. I was surprised how much there was, and you could see where it was interesting. Some procedures, it's mainly lips that were very noticeable. The very large enlarged lips seem to be very fashionable there. But that's just a side point. But again, the plastic surgery, the idea of wanting to change your body to fit into what is the trend at the moment. And I'm sure many of you know there's this idea of the Instagram face and the Instagram body. That's mainly to do with women. I'm sure for men, there are certain body types that men aspire to, and there are procedures or steroids or whatever it is to try to achieve that. But I'm just thinking of the Instagram face for women. It's a very women will have plastic surgery to get the kind of slanted fox eyes, to have enlarged lips, to have a petite nose, and then also there's this Brazilian butt lift. I think it's correct. I was watching a documentary about this, and again, having an enlarged rear end, that is another procedure. It's very popular. But so now again, as Muslims, the first thing we have to think about is if anyone is thinking of plastic surgery, because seeing that I was offered it on a plate so many times, you have to think, is this permitted? Am I, there's issues relating to aura. What can you uncover in front of a person to have an unnecessary, procedure done on yourself? But also, more importantly, this obsession with the body. That was my kind of point that I was making, and I've kind of gone off on a tangent. But so first thing is always think, am I allowed to do this? I need to ask a person of knowledge. Am I allowed to do any kind of procedure? Am I allowed to, have these piercings done? Which again is another thing that it happens a lot. So okay, so now that's one aspect. Now the other aspect is that when you live by this principle that you've accepted it, it's an okay principle. Where is the end point? Where does it end? That is my concern, because when we look nowadays, that if we that statement then makes dressing provocatively, and I'm talking about men and women here now, and objectifying yourself and presenting yourself in a very sexualized manner, that becomes okay because it's your body. You can do with whatever you want with it. You see that's what, and we see that happening. So that's something that is going on. The other thing that you have is the idea of cross-dressing. Now, and so men dressing like women and women dressing like men. Because if that's how you choose to express yourself and show your body, again, who can argue with you if that's what they believe in? And again, if we start believing in that, how can we then argue with someone who says, and again, even let's say discuss it with our children or our nieces and nephews, because if you've taken that on board, why are you then going to accept any hadith or any ayah that then opposes that view? That's the area where it becomes quite grey. Now then, what becomes worse is the idea of nudity. Again, that you have this whole movement where people say you should be able to show your body, but then the next step then goes on to pornography. How can you argue against pornography when someone is saying, well, I want to do this, it's my choice, who are you to tell me not to do it? Can you see? It's this idea that no one can tell you what to show, what not to show. And also then if you want to make money from that as well, and the argument that is always put forward is, I'm not harming anyone else. Yeah, it's my choice. And it becomes difficult for friends to advise each other. It becomes difficult for parents to advise their children. So again, as Muslims, I guess I want us all to think about the ramifications of taking that statement on board. Now then, the final point that then you come to is, well, if someone says, well, I don't like my body, I don't like I'm a man, but I feel like I'm trapped. I actually want to be in a woman's body, or vice versa, that a woman saying, I'm a man inside a woman's body, I need to change my body. And that is exactly what we have now. And it seems that you are not allowed to critique that view. You are not allowed to point out all the dangers. Doctors who point out the dangers of sex change procedures are criticized, and you're labeled as a bigot. You are labeled as you're illiberal, because you are preventing someone from doing what they want to with their body. Again, so you can see a person can very happily argue, it's my body, it's my choice. It's none of your business. And what is really tragic is when you see this in children, that this way of thinking is, as you all know, it's on Netflix shows, it's in books, it's being popularized, and children are then starting to think, well, yeah, maybe I am, let's say a girl's a bit tomboyish, she doesn't like playing with dolls, she doesn't like wearing pink, big deal. Lots of girls are like that. And then these ideas start filtering that, well, oh, maybe you should be a boy, or maybe you are a boy, it's just you're in the wrong body. And so these are really, I guess I've said quite a lot, and it's just food for thought, really. And like I said before, I discuss this in greater depth in, and the other ideas that have added to this, where in my Islam and feminism course. And it's interesting, this isn't a popular topic. People may, I've had people say to me that, why you're having a go at feminism, or you're unnecessarily being critical. But it's interesting when you study a topic, and then it helps you on, especially when it's relating to society, because when I think as Muslims, it's our duty to care about not only our society, our communities, wider community, society as well. The Prophet said, Islam came not just for Muslims, it came for all of humanity. And when we can see the cause of a problem, I think we should intelligently and calmly discuss it. And that's what I hope to achieve in my Islam and feminism course, that if we look at, when it comes to women's rights and the whole idea of how a woman should think about her life, about her body, about what she chooses to do, feminism has become it's like the overarching framework that is used. We can't, I think it would be naive of us to ignore that. And like I said, when I do discuss this topic of, and it comes under second wave feminism, that's where I look at it. To understand where we are today, the problems that we are seeing, and what we need to realize as Muslims, we live in the West, we are affected by it. It's not like we are cocooned or insulated from this, because as you know, whether it's our friends, whether it's our teenage nieces and nephews, they are being taught these ideas in colleges. But to be honest, we're all consuming it via popular culture and social media. And it's so easy. The fact that I see Muslims repeating this, that I see it on their social media feeds, and I think I'm not being arrogant here. Once upon a time, I wasn't aware of this, but I think if you knew the history and then the ramifications of the statement, you wouldn't be so quick to propagate it. And that's what I'm just asking us to all do, is just think it through and realize that, okay, this is a way of thinking that contradicts my deen. And if I take it on board and I start posting it online, and if I start allowing my family and friends to say these things without, intelligently and calmly questioning them, that is going to be a problem. And the thing is that talking is how things change. The Prophet ﷺ, he talked to people. He got them to question their ideas. So, the whole idea of burying your daughters alive, the Quran made people question that action. The idea of mistreating orphans, the Quran pointed that out, that this is going on in society, and questioned it, and made people who had never thought about it before, made them question their actions. And it got them thinking, and that created change. So, alhamdulillah, as Muslims, I really do feel that's what our role is in society today. So, inshallah, if you found that useful, have a look at the course, inshallah. The link is at the top. It's on smartmuslimah.com. Would you like to share in the reward of the creation and promotion of Smart Muslimah podcast? If so, there's 3 easy ways you can do this. Number 1, your du'as are so valued. That would really help in the creation of the podcast. Number 2, please leave a quick review. And number 3, donate via the link in the podcast description, so that I can really promote this podcast to more Muslims, and inshallah they can benefit from the content. So all the links you need are in the podcast description. I'd like to thank all my listeners. From the bottom of my heart, I wouldn't be able to continue creating this podcast if it wasn't for your du'as and your support. Jazakallah khair.